Welcome to the deep dive. You know, when most of us think about money, our brains immediately go to numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
Spreadsheets, financial ratios, stock prices, all that stuff. It feels like it should follow these strict, logical rules. It feels almost like physics.
It absolutely feels like
Yeah.
physics. Yeah, you look for these universal laws, formulas that sort of dictate outcomes. But the material we've been exploring for this deep dive, well, it tells a very different story.
Okay.
The central idea here is that financial outcomes are driven far more by psychology and behavior than by any kind of hard science. Money isn't like physics at all. It's much more like psychology.
Psychology. Okay, let's dig into that because that fundamentally changes how you approach everything, doesn't it? From saving for retirement to making investment decisions.
It really does.
So this deep dive is all about getting past the equations and understanding the deeply human side of money specifically, how your own unique background and experiences totally shape the way you think about and handle cash.
Exactly. Your financial decisions aren't being made by some, perfectly rational calculator in your brain.
Right.
They're made by a person, maybe sitting at your kitchen table trying to pay bills, or in a high-stakes company board meeting, influenced by everything.
Like what sort of things?
Well, your personal history, your family's history with money, your worldview, maybe even your ego, your pride, the latest marketing message you saw, or the specific incentives you're facing. All of that gets blended into this narrative that makes perfect sense to you in that moment.
And that narrative is so personal. The material we reviewed highlighted this really well with the example of people born in different decades. Think about someone born in 1970 versus someone born in 1950.
Yeah, it's a striking contrast, yeah.
Yeah.
If you were born in 1970, your teenage years and early 20s, those crucial formative years, saw the stock market, adjusted for inflation, increase almost tenfold.
Wow, tenfold.
Yeah, it's a period of immense growth defining your early perspective.
Right. Now compare that to someone born in 1950. During their teens and 20s, roughly from, say, 1965 to 1975, the market basically went nowhere after accounting for inflation. It was just flat, a decade of stagnation.
And what's fascinating is how those two completely different economic realities during their impressionable years could lead two intelligent people to have radically different, deeply held beliefs about how the stock market even functions.
Makes sense.
One sees it as this powerful engine for wealth. The other might see it as, I don't know, a volatile waste of time. And neither is necessarily wrong based on their personal history.
That personal lens is so powerful. It explains things that look irrational from the outside, like the example of lottery tickets.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
Americans spend billions on them, often people in lower income brackets. To someone who's financially stable, buying a lottery ticket when you're struggling seems, well, counterproductive, maybe even crazy.
From a purely probabilistic viewpoint, yes, the odds are astronomical, the expected return is terrible. But the sources make the point that you have to look at it through their unique experience, their narrative.
So what's the narrative there?
Maybe that $2 ticket isn't about making a smart investment. Maybe it's about buying a tiny, inexpensive dose of hope, the dream of a different life, even if it's just for a few minutes while you hold a ticket. To that person, in their specific circumstances, that purchase fulfills a need that maybe others don't perceive. Understanding why someone does what they do, even if it seems baffling to you, that's key. It's less about them being crazy and more about their unique story.
So recognizing that our own perceptions and histories color our financial world is step one. And once you start seeing that, you have to acknowledge two concepts that are really inseparable and often misunderstood: luck and risk.
They're presented as siblings in the material, and it's a helpful way to think about them. They're the acknowledgement that outcomes aren't solely dependent on your effort or intelligence.
Right. Success isn't just about being smart or working hard.
And failure isn't always due to laziness or incompetence.
Yeah. And the classic example used is the stark contrast between Ronald Read and Richard Fiscone. You have Red, a janitor, quietly living frugally, saving and investing in simple blue chip stocks for decades, who died worth over $8 million.
$8 million. Incredible. And then you have Fiscone, a Harvard MBA, a high-flying executive at Merrill Lynch, widely praised for his financial acumen.
Top of his game, supposedly.
Right, who ended up going bankrupt.
That contrast forces you to ask, how could a janitor with no formal finance background achieve a far better financial outcome than a Harvard-trained Wall Street executive? It highlights that deep down, financial success isn't about crushing complexity or having the highest IQ.
It's much more of a soft skill. The material emphasizes that how you behave is ultimately more important than what you know.
Behavior over brains, in a way.
Kind of. Reads consistent patient behavior over a lifetime jest. It trumped Fuscone's knowledge and high-income volatility.
Yeah,
And yes, luck plays an undeniable role.
a big role.
Huge. Luck in avoiding major personal catastrophes, luck in when you were born and what markets you lived through, luck in who you met.
As Scott Galloway is quoted, and it feels very relevant here, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems.
It speaks to that role of external forces, absolutely.
Hmm.
A crucial takeaway is the need for humility when things go well. Acknowledge that luck likely played a part.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. And perhaps more importantly, forgiveness when things go wrong. Recognize that risk is inherent in life and markets. The goal isn't to eliminate risk you can't, but to build enough buffer into your financial life so that when a bad investment happens or you face unexpected hardship, it doesn't wipe you out.
You need to survive.
You need to survive to keep playing the game.
Exactly.
Survival.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful framing, and it connects directly to the counterintuitive force of time and compounding. We hear about compounding constantly, but truly grasping its power is incredibly difficult. It really fights against our intuition. Think about Bill Gates questioning in 2004 why anyone would need a gigabyte of storage for email when Gmail launched.
Right, I remember that. Seems crazy now.
It does. But his perspective was rooted in a world where storage was physically large and expensive. He couldn't easily compute the exponential growth that technology would undergo. That's the same kind of difficulty people have truly internalizing compounding.
And when you look at someone like Warren Buffett, there are thousands of books dissecting his strategies. But the most important factor cited in the material isn't some secret trading technique. It's the simple fact that he's been investing consistently for, what, 3/4 of a century?
Just about. The power of shut up and wait, as one section put it, showing a simple chart of economic growth over decades. The potential of compounding over very long periods is often overlooked because it lacks the drama.
Yeah, it's not exciting.
It's not exciting. It doesn't feel as active or smart as trying to pick the next hot stock or time the market perfectly, but it's the real engine of wealth creation over time.
And that brings us to the crucial distinction. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. Getting wealthy often involves optimism and taking calculated risks.
But staying wealthy, that requires a completely different mindset. It demands humility, a healthy dose of fear, frugality, and constantly acknowledging the role luck played in getting you there.
Humility and fear. Not usually what you associate with finance gurus.
Maybe not, but it's crucial for preservation. The cautionary tale of Jesse Livermore is a prime example, a legendary trader who made and lost fortunes, ultimately losing it all after the 1929 crash due to overconfidence. He knew how to get wealthy, but not how to keep it.
So what did Buffett do to stay wealthy, according to the material? A lot of it was about what he didn't do.
Interesting. Like what?
Well, he didn't drown himself in debt. He didn't panic sell during the 14 recessions he's navigated.
14?
Yeah. He didn't compromise his reputation. He wasn't rigidly tied to just one investment strategy. He didn't rely on external funding that could be pulled away.
Staying wealthy is fundamentally about surviving the unpredictable swings of markets and life. And survival is paramount because whether you're looking at venture capital or the stock market, a huge portion of the overall returns are driven by a very small number of outlier events, what are often called tails.
The big winners.
Exactly. Like in VC, where most startups fail. But the fund's returns are dominated by just a few huge winners. You might think public markets are different, but the research on the Russell 3000 index since 1980 show that 40% of stocks lost 70% or more and never recovered.
40%. That's brutal.
It is. And nearly all the index's returns came from just 7% of companies that performed phenomenally well.
So you need to be around for those 7%ers.
This means your ability to capture those rare, massive wins depends entirely on surviving the many inevitable losses and downturns along the way. Being around to benefit from the tail events is key. Survival is the overlooked skill.
Okay, so if staying wealthy is about survival and benefiting from those long-term rare wins, what is money really for? What's the ultimate point of accumulating it?
The highest dividend money can pay you, the material argues, is control over your time. It's independence.
Control over time, not like a faster car.
Not primarily, no. There's a powerful reference to gerontologist Carl Pillemer's interviews with elderly Americans. When asked about their regrets, not a single person said they wish they had worked harder to make more money to buy more things or keep up with the neighbors.
That flips the script on how we often measure financial success, doesn't it? It highlights the difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Absolutely. Being rich is usually about a high current income, and it's often demonstrated by spending the expensive car, the huge house, the visible consumption. It's about maximizing income today.
And wealthy.
Wealth is income that you don't spend. It's savings, it's investments. It's often hidden. It's about accumulating assets over time.
And I think that's a core problem, isn't it? Most people deep down probably want the freedom and flexibility that comes with wealth, but our culture constantly shows us and reinforces the behaviors of being rich, which is all about spending.
Exactly. Since wealth is hidden, it's hard to learn the crucial behavior needed for it. Restraint. You don't see wealthy people's savings accounts or brokerage statements.
You just see the results of spending.
Precisely. And this leads to a definition of saving that really stuck with me. Saving is the gap between your ego and your income.
Oh, say it again?
Saving is the gap between your ego and your income. It's not just about earning a lot of money. It's about consciously keeping your expenses lower than they could be, even as your income rises. It's about managing your lifestyle expectations, which the sources frame as raising your humility.
Raising your humility, I like that. So saving money, even without a specific goal in mind, like buying a house or a car, isn't just random hoarding.
Not at all. Saving is essentially a hedge against life's inevitable uncertainties. And the intangible benefits it provides, the flexibility to change jobs, the security of having a buffer, the control over your own time, are often far more valuable than any tangible purchase you could make.
It gives you options.
It provides that crucial room to maneuver when the unexpected pops up.
And speaking of maneuvering in the unexpected, this brings us to another key behavioral insight. When making financial decisions, the goal shouldn't be to be coldly, perfectly rational. Instead, aim to be reasonable.
Reasonable over rational. That sounds, well, like it shouldn't work in finance. A bit
Yeah.
soft, maybe.
It does sound that way, but think about it. We aren't purely logical machines. We are emotional beings, deeply influenced by social factors, prone to biases. Trying to force yourself to be perfectly rational is often unrealistic and unsustainable over the long haul.
Okay, give me an example.
A great example of this is Harry Markowitz. He won a Nobel Prize for developing modern portfolio theory, the bedrock of rational asset allocation.
Right, the efficient frontier and all that.
Exactly. Yet, when asked about his own personal investments, he admitted he simply split his money 50-50 between bonds and equities.
50-50, just like that.
Yep. Not based on some complex rational model, but because he wanted to minimize his future regret if one asset class drastically outperformed the other.
That's fascinating. It's purely emotional reasoning from the guy who wrote the Rational Rulebook.
That's such a human, reasonable decision. It accounts for emotional factors like regret that a purely rational model wouldn't include. Finance exists in the real world, with real people. Being reasonable is often more practical and helps you stick to a plan when times get tough.
And part of being reasonable, part of building in that survivability is having room for error or a margin of safety. It's more than just being conservative.
Right. It's about designing your financial life so you can absorb shocks. The sources gave this incredibly memorable, almost absurd example from World War II. German tanks, some of the most advanced military hardware of the time, were defeated not by enemy fire, but by field mice eating through the electrical insulation while the tanks sat idle.
Mice? You're kidding.
Nope. Mice, you can anticipate artillery fire, strategic maneuvers, but mice. You can't possibly plan for every single potential risk, especially the truly bizarre, unexpected ones.
Yeah, no kidding.
Building in buffer financial savings, flexible career options, loose timelines isn't being overly cautious. It's essential because surprises will happen, and it's often the crazy, unplannable risks that do the most damage if you have no buffer.
Margin for error against, well, anything, including rodents.
Including rodents. Finally, there's a really interesting point made about the price of investing. Long-term, successful investing isn't free. It demands a cost.
But the currency isn't just monetary, right?
Exactly. The material talks about the non-monetary costs: volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, regret. These are easy to ignore when markets are soaring, but they feel very real during a sharp downturn.
Oh, absolutely, that pit in your stomach feeling.
Yeah. And trying to avoid paying this price, perhaps by constantly trading, trying to time the market, or even manipulating results like GE notoriously did under Jack Welch by smoothing out earnings, often leads to paying double later on when reality eventually catches up.
So you can't cheat the system indefinitely.
Seems not. It's a mindset shift. Instead of viewing volatility or doubt as fines you should somehow avoid, see them as fees required to earn long-term returns.
Fees, not fines. I like that.
You pay the price enduring the uncertainty because of what you get in return, the potential for compounding growth over time.
Okay.
So, pulling back from this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is that money isn't just equations on a page. It's deeply psychological, intensely personal, and shaped by everything you've lived through.
Understanding that behavioral side helps you navigate uncertainty, redefine what financial success truly means.
Which is that control over your time.
Right. Control over your time, build resilience through saving and margin of safety, and accept that long-term success comes with non-monetary costs you have to be willing to bear.
It moves the focus from trying to follow some universal rational blueprint to understanding your own messy human nature and building a financial life that can survive and thrive in an unpredictable world.
And here's something to really chew on as you think about your own financial life. You are going to change significantly over decades. Your values, your goals, your perspective will evolve.
That's definitely true.
This makes creating rigid, detailed 40-year financial plans incredibly difficult. Yet, the immense power of compounding and consistent investing absolutely relies on patience and long-term adherence. So,
How do you balance the need to be adaptable and embrace the inevitable changes within yourself with the necessity of sticking to a consistent long-term financial approach that weathering unpredictable events demands?
adaptability versus consistency.
Exactly. It's a crucial tension worth considering.